Once again, we meet again today, and I want to really celebrate you who have been following us through. Please keep sharing, share with others, because I believe what we are discussing here brings change in our lives, and we want it to be a habit changer for you and even us. We are not saying that we are the professionals. We also still check ourselves and we pick ourselves up in these particular things that we talk about. So wonderful to see you, Nadine Ochieng. My name with my co-host,
Newton Ciela. It's always a pleasure to have you join us.
And Newton, today, I know we are talking about self-care, but last week we left it off on emotional intelligence. Now, please, if you're struggling and you need help, be able to reach unto us. We are available, or get a coach or a mentor around you, and these things will be able to work in your life. So today we are talking about self-care, and Newton. If I would pick from, I think we are discussing earlier, and I was telling you, this is the area where I'm seeing a lot of struggle, especially in workplace. You can always tell someone has not been sleeping. They've been carrying work home and working through the night. I was talking to someone who, the other day we were having a meeting, an online meeting, and he's telling me I've not slept for 2 days because I've been on duty at work. And during the day, I have family issues to run, so I've not slept for 2 days. So maybe after this, I'll catch some sleep. And you can literally tell that this person is not taking care of themselves.
That's interesting, because I think since I come from the medical field, usually we say that people tend to get admitted when something goes wrong. And at that particular time, it's no longer, it's outside your control, because you're relying on a doctor to put some infusion fluids to manage something that's happening in your body. And I think self-care is very important. It's important because the way in which God created us is such that you needed to be able to rejuvenate and to reenergize. And what we have seen is that the consequence of not rejuvenating and reenergizing is far much more higher. I was telling you offline that there is a book that we did in our book club called The Off Switch. And I remember one of the things that Professor Mark Copley was saying is that you must be deliberate about self-care. That's the first thing. You must be deliberate. So it really means that when you plan for your day, when you plan for your week, when you plan for your month, when you plan for the year, there must be areas that you have ring-fenced. And for us, by the ring-fenced means you put a very strong fence there. Because if you don't do that, something will come in and it will take or pull away that particular time. And so you find that, as you've said, because it's easy for us with the current interconnectedness, or we call it the Internet of Things, to be connected throughout. You leave work and you're still at work. You're sleeping and you're still at work, which is quite dangerous.
There is, I want to throw a spanner in the works. You have this person who is now saying, I'm watching this, but I know that I have very few years I'm seeing my retirement coming up in the next 2 or 3 years. But on the other side, you have also someone saying that I need to make hay when it's shining when I'm young, because I'm learning from my parents' failures. They never did it. What would you tell such a person?
But I think that is, and it's interesting because there are many people who keep telling themselves that since I'm about to retire, let me make hay while the sun shines. But remember also, you need to be alive even in retirement. And there are people that sadly never get to make it into their retirement. Why? Because they got burnt out completely.
Very true.
And they ended up, as I said, I come from the medical field. We have these chronic diseases like diabetes, hypertension, and we call them lifestyle related now. And we say that everybody is like a loaded gun. All you're waiting for is a trigger. And sometimes that trigger is because of lack of self-care.
A couple of years ago, I was working in an organization that never gave rest. So I found myself working. I actually, even the day off was only Monday. And that Monday felt so short. It felt so short that actually you thought you didn't have enough time to basically do what you're meant to do. Now, one day, I find myself in the bus. Then suddenly I can't walk, Newton. Let me tell you, that was sobering for me. From that time, I learned how to pay attention to my body. So suddenly I can't walk. My feet can't move. I try to move. I'm feeling such pain. Guess what? I pass out in the bus. So this lady who was next to
That is
me
scary, yes.
actually takes my phone and calls my wife. My wife is a bit far from me, calls the person I had called previously. I tell you, that was an angel. So this person comes to pick me from the bus station in town. So they diagnosed me with muscular spasms because I have not been able to have rest. Newton, what are some of these things that people do that make them not rest?
Or even the other way to look at it, Percy, is that they don't do, right? I think, as I said, our work gets to occupy the bulk of our time. And resting is not just from a physical perspective, but also from a mental perspective. Now, let me start from the physical perspective. Is it important that you get adequate amount of sleep? Absolutely. It has been shown that when you sleep the required amount of hours, your body is able to rejuvenate itself. It's almost the way in which we go into a pit stop or you go into a petrol station and you refill your car. That's what sleep does. But also, if you look at it in terms of disconnecting, and me, I'm talking about the off switch from a mental perspective, sometimes you need to be off that plug in about work, so that you can also be able to get your mind to rest, get your mind to be able to sort of wind down, as we like to call it. And I think those two things are extremely important, and it's clearly been shown, from a number of studies, that they actually impact on our well-being. So number one is, if you don't disconnect at a physical level, you're more likely to get sick, get a chronic disease, get into mental health-related issues. And the same thing is that for those who are able to balance, they're actually able to actually live longer. And so to go back to what you were saying, we all aspire one day to be able to retire and just comfortably be able to live the rest of our lives. You can't do it if you don't disconnect well enough. And that's extremely important. And I want to come back to you because I think we in our audience, in our podcast, we have the younger people, the younger generation. And maybe they don't really understand what we are talking about. For them, they are wondering, And by the way, they've come into a generation where they're not necessarily as plugged into work as we are. For them, they feel like I need to be off sometimes. But why is it important for them to also consider self-care, even as they consider their generation, the Gen Zs, and you're saying the Gen Alphas? Why is self-care just as important for them also?
I want to say, Newton, that, the generations that come after us always think they are resting, but in reality, they are not. So if you are caught up with friends chatting till midnight or past midnight, these things, let me tell you, the deception is that when I'm away from the workspace, I am resting. I have actually come to realize you are not resting, because you can chat friends up past midnight. You can go out to have a drink past midnight. You can do many things we overdo and overindulge.
So you're still switched on.
So you're still switched on. You have not actually switched off. So I think for me, I would want to tell the younger generation that these things is a culture that you create. And a culture doesn't come out like you don't create it immediately. It is something you have to build upon. So my thought is, from a young age, learn to have a culture, put a culture in place that will be able to help you rest. Have a system in place that will, when you switch off, you've switched off. Go off the phone, go off everything, and just rest to rejuvenate. I think that will be my parting shot, even as we come to the end of this podcast. What would be yours, Newton?
I couldn't agree more. I think for our younger generation, please remember that in as much as the tool we have, which is the mobile phone, the iPads, have enabled us to remain connected and plugged in, it is so important for you to also switch off from them once in a while. And I'm glad to say that some of them now come with a technology where you can set that particular time where it just goes off. So if you are at that particular age, remember, in order for you to have self-care, you also have to disconnect. And for our generation, we're just reminding you that you need to be able to rest, sleep enough. You need to be able to also get a switch off from work. Yes. Otherwise, as I said, we will be happy on the other side to sell you the medications. And you don't need these medicines. So self-care is extremely important. And for our, for our audience today, for those who are listening to us on the podcast, please challenge yourself and really see that you're taking good care of yourself. Thank you so much, and see you in our next podcast.
Beautiful, wonderful time.